Imagine the moment when you can no longer endure your own life, the day when the mirror seems to scream, "Enough!" It is precisely this emotion, disgusting, painful, unbearable, that becomes the beginning of true change. And here's the paradox: not the love of comfort, not the dream of an easy life, but discomfort, despair, and determination push us forward. And today I will tell you about 4 inner forces that one day may tear your old habits to pieces and open the door to a new life. Stay with me until the end, because in the practical part you will get simple steps that will help turn these emotions into fuel for your own transformation. Method 1. Disgust. The day you tell yourself, enough. When I first said this word on stage, people shuddered. Disgust? How could that be positive? And I smiled. Yes, if it's directed correctly. Because there's a day when you look in the mirror and suddenly see not just a tired face, but a contract you signed with your own mediocrity. I remember that day well. I was 25, with almost nothing in my pockets, debts in the bank, and bitterness in my heart from humiliation. That's when I said, I will not live like this anymore. The world didn't change. I changed first, on the inside, before the changes came outside. The story is simple. Sometimes the bottom is the best foundation for taking off. Disgust is not about hating yourself. It's about honesty, about transparency that tolerates no excuses. It's like a bright light in a dark room. Suddenly you can see where you yourself put your dream on hold, where you agreed to a slow defeat under the sauce of I'm busy, I'm tired, I'm not ready yet. In that moment of disgust, we stop bargaining with reality. We stop explaining and justifying ourselves. And it is then that a force is born capable of breaking the old familiar rhythm. Have you seen how people collect tomorrows for years? Tomorrow I'll go to the gym. Tomorrow I'll write a business plan. Tomorrow I'll finally tell the truth. And then comes one short, sharp moment, and the whole tower of tomorrows shatters into pieces. Disgust is a moment of sobriety that says, stop growing weeds in your head. It's time to stand guard at the doors of your mind, letting in only what strengthens you and refusing shelter to thoughts that steal your actions. Because thought is the first brick of a habit. What we let into our minds today becomes our character tomorrow. But there's a trap. Many stop right there. I hate how I live, they say, and then return to their old paths. Why? Because emotion by itself is just a spark. It needs a fuse and fuel. The fuse is decision, which we'll look at later, and the fuel is daily self-work. When my mentor told me, work harder on yourself than on your job, I finally understood why my efforts bore no fruit. I was grinding away at work, but hardly investing in the person who showed up to that job every day myself. Disgust without practice becomes drama. Disgust with practice becomes growth. So I did something simple. I took a pen and began recording what was worth keeping. Thoughts that lift me up and lessons that burn. When you hear something valuable, write it down. When you see a habit taking over, write it down. My journal became both my mirror and my action plan, because memory betrays, but paper does not. Disgust gave me honesty. The journal gave me direction. What exactly does disgust give you? First, it strips the romance from excuses. When enough sounds inside, it's hard to convince yourself that it's not the right time or the stars aren't aligned. Second, it restores your power of choice. You suddenly see that there's more than one path. Yes, fear remains, but the tone changes from I can't to I no longer agree. Third, disgust sets off a chain of transformations. You begin to align your thoughts, then your daily actions. And when you become different, the world responds differently. Because success is not chased, it is attracted by who you become. I often compare disgust to the moment when a climber looks at a rock face and says, either the summit or nothing. It's not about recklessness, it's about clarity of purpose. Bad habits are a slippery slope where everything seems like later. Disgust is the crampons on your boots. It hooks you into the surface of reality. Here's my weight, here's my bank balance, here's my calendar, here's my truth about relationships, here's my morning start. When you see it on paper, the fog of self-deception disappears. And then the golden rule comes into play. You don't attract what you want, you attract what you are. Change yourself, and the world's response changes too. And what should I do tomorrow morning, you ask? Start with a small vow to yourself. Today, I will not miss the moment of truth. When your hand reaches for the old habit, pause for 1 second and ask, what am I really feeling? Fatigue, boredom, fear? Name it. Write it down in 1 sentence. Then make the smallest move in the opposite direction. Not a marathon 10 minutes. Not for life one day. The secret is that small victories, not grand declarations, cement a new identity. Tomorrow your brain will already remember, I did it yesterday. And with each passing day, the distance between the old me and the new one grows. Don't fear the pain of disgust. Pain is a signal of growth. When a muscle burns, it grows stronger. When conscience burns, it brings you back to responsibility, and responsibility, like discipline, gives birth to self-respect. You begin to trust your own word, and when you trust yourself, decisions become easier and habits more resilient. And yes, ahead of us are 3 more forces to strengthen this first one: decision, desire, and determination. But without enough, they won't start the engine. With enough, your engine is already idling, waiting for a gear shift. Remember, disgust is not the end of the story, it's the beginning. It's the scene where the hero stops running away. When you accept this inner challenge with respect and firmness, you open the door to that version of yourself who doesn't chase change, but becomes the change. And very soon we'll add the next element, decision, so that this spark turns into a course, and the course into a path that will lead you to your own summit. But that's the next part. Method 2, decision, not standing at the crossroads. When I talk about the power of decision, I mean that inner moment when the marketplace of doubts falls silent and one voice finally takes the microphone. Before that, it's a real civil war. Fear argues with faith, comfort bargains with opportunity, habit whispers, don't rush, and conscience replies, you're already late. I know this noise from my own experience. I was young, with an empty wallet and a whole wagon of excuses. But one evening I made a decision, and everything changed, not because the world changed, but because I stopped camping at the crossroads. Decision is the moment when you stop waiting for permission from circumstances and grant it to yourself. Decision is always painful because it cuts off. You can discuss plans for years, mold later, count options, but until a choice is made, energy gets spread too thin. The moment you say, this is my course, you reclaim the power of focus. A choice doesn't guarantee clear skies, but it guarantees direction, and with direction comes speed. I often say one clear decision removes 100 small questions. Wake up or not decided. When to train decided. Who to meet decided. When you've truly decided, your calendar fills with actions, not wishes. Many wait for the perfect moment to decide, but the perfect moment doesn't exist. Life will always be noisy, inconvenient, imperfect. That's why a real decision is not a reaction to convenience, but a choice despite inconvenience. I remember standing before a hall telling people it's better to take an imperfect step in the right direction than to stand perfectly still. Clarity appears in motion. You can only adjust your course on the road. You can't turn the boat if it's not moving. Decision launches movement, and movement gives you the understanding of exactly where you're wrong and how to fix it. There's another trap. I'll try. That's not a decision, it's a polite delay. When I say decided, I mean an agreement with yourself where the words or and maybe are replaced with I do. People ask me, but what if it doesn't work? Friends, failure is not proof that the decision was wrong, it's data for correction. Decision gives you the right to make mistakes with meaning. Every attempt becomes an experiment, not a tragedy. Without decision, every mistake is a reason to return to your old life. With decision, it's just a mark on the map. Here I learned how not to do it. Look at how the power of cost works. In indecision, the cost is always hidden. It's collected slowly, minutes, days, years, until you realize the future has been eaten away by small laters. Decision makes the cost explicit. You pay up front with discipline, refusal, discomfort, and in return you get interest in the form of self-respect. Self-respect is born where words match actions. When you don't let yourself down, a new tone appears in your voice, and the world hears it. And one more thing, decision is not always a loud speech. Sometimes it's a quiet inner vow after which you put your small world in order, removed from sight what steals focus. Set a specific time for what matters. Opened a book instead of a feed. Replaced will see with I do. It's in the small things that decision passes its real test. A grand declaration without daily confirmations dries up in a few days. Small confirmations every day turn decision into character. Discipline is the child of decision, and it grows through repetition. Do you know how I helped myself? I made my decision visible. I wrote it in simple language and kept it in front of my eyes. Words lose their vagueness when ink touches paper. Written down, it becomes an obligation. An obligation turns desire into schedule. When your hand reaches for the old habit, your eyes catch your self-signed course, and in your head a voice says, "We already agreed." That's why I insist so much on clarity. A decision should be something you can explain to a 7-year-old child and to your tired self tomorrow. What will test your decision? Very simple. The same thing that happens to everyone. One day it won't be convenient. It'll rain. Someone will let you down. The stars will misalign. And that's the moment when your decision will either come alive or prove to be decoration. If it comes alive, you'll do the minimum needed to stay on course and give yourself the right to switch gears without guilt. If the decision was only an emotion, you'll look for smart reasons to start on Monday. That's the difference between those who move forward and those who walk in circles. I love the mountain metaphor. On the trail there are always forks. The map is knowledge. The weather is circumstances. The companions are your environment, but the steps are made by your legs. Decision is the moment you shift your body weight onto the front foot. Not a promise to walk, but the first step. After that, the path begins to respond, shows stones, opens views, forces you to choose a pace. Life works the same. As long as your weight is on both feet, you're in the pose of doubt. Shift your weight and you earn the right to climb. Remember, we'll still talk about desire, it ignites the heart, and about determination, it cements the course. But without decision, these two forces remain either a spark or armor locked in a closet. Today, your task is to move yourself out of the camp at the crossroads. Choose a course that makes you greater than yesterday and anchor it with your first action. That's how the inertia of growth is born. That's how yesterday's noise fades and tomorrow's you begin to hear clearly. And yes, this isn't all yet. Ahead will light the fire of desire so that your decision has warmth that doesn't fade on cold days. Method 3. Desire. The fire that doesn't go out. When people ask me where to find that real I want, I always smile. Don't look for it in a store. Desire is born inside, but often awakened by an outside touch, a song that accidentally hits you right in the heart, a sermon that sounds like a letter written just for you, a conversation with a friend that somehow burns all night, even a bitter failure that forces you to live with wide open eyes. But the truth is simple. If you're empty inside, no spark will ignite. If there's a foundation of values and dreams inside, any spark can turn into a flame. I know this because once I sat in darkness with no money and no direction, and one meeting, one sentence from a mentor awakened such a thirst in me that I couldn't not move. From that day on, desire stopped being a whim and became fuel. True desire doesn't ask for comfortable weather. It pushes you out of bed before the alarm rings. It gives your voice a new tone when you speak about the future. And yes, it's uncomfortable, because desire is not a couch dream. It's a refusal to keep living somehow. You feel the difference in every detail, in the dish you choose for dinner, in the page you finish reading, in how you answer one more "let's do it tomorrow." Desire changes your micro-choices, and micro-choices sculpt destiny. There's a big mistake, waiting for desire to grow to the level of movie inspiration. Friends, desire doesn't come to entertain you. It comes to mobilize you. It doesn't always sound like an orchestra. More often, it's a quiet inner command. Begin. On the first day, the voice is barely audible. By the 10th, it's convincing. By the 100th, it sets your standards. And here's the key. Desire needs proof. You won't fuel the fire by dreaming of a bonfire. You'll feed it with small twigs of action. When you take the first step, even the tiniest, desire receives evidence. I'm serious. What? When steps repeat, desire becomes habit, and habit becomes character. Remember my favorite phrase, success is not pursued, it is attracted by who you become. Desire is what triggers that attraction. You don't just want more, you become more. You raise the bar for yourself, in knowledge, in relationships, in work. And the world responds with new opportunities, new people, new answers. But without one habit, desire quickly burns out if you don't know how to guard your own mind. An open door with no guard and desire is devoured by doubts, gossip, random voices. So the first thing I did when my true I want awakened was set up security at the doors of my thoughts. What strengthens me comes in. What steals strength turns away. This isn't heroism, it's hygiene. Second, I gave desire a shape. The clearer the picture, the stronger the pull. Uncertainty dries emotion, clarity feeds it. When I first sat down and wrote who I wanted to become in 5 years, I had no guarantees. Just a pen, paper, and honesty. But that's what made desire visible. Visible desire is easier to turn into a plan and a plan into a path. There's no magic here. You move the spark from your head onto paper and it starts warming your calendar. Third, I climb to a minimal height every day, no matter my mood. Desire loves rhythm. Uneven bursts make it a whim. Steady steps make it character. So even on days when inspiration ran away, I gave myself small wins. 10 pages, 20 minutes, one call, one truthful conversation. And do you know what happens? Willpower begins to trust itself. And when you trust yourself, desire stops being a mood, it becomes a standard. Fourth, I learned to turn triggers into allies. If the outer world can stir your desire, let it do so more often. Fill your space with songs, words, stories, people that ignite your fire. Remove from your desk anything that puts it out. No romance here. Desire is chemistry of environment. Change the environment, change the concentration of fire. If your home, your phone, your meetings don't support your aspirations, they work against them. Create a stage where your desire can easily perform every day. And finally, fifth, connect desire with decision. Without decision, desire becomes a pretty story you tell your friends. With decision, desire becomes a path you're accountable for. You tell yourself, I want, and then immediately add, here's what I do today. After that, life stops being a lottery and becomes a contract between your dreams and your actions. And if sometimes the fire weakens, don't panic. Just return to the source. Clear your thoughts, refresh the picture of the future, take the smallest step, and throw on more twigs. Desire doesn't demand perfect conditions, it demands your participation. Let me be clear, you don't have to wait for someone else to inspire you. Become the person who fuels your own desire. Build an inner economy where hope is not wasted on excuses but invested in action. And remember, we'll still add cement to this fire determination. That's what will make sure your fire doesn't go out at the first rain. But that's the next page of our journey. Method 4. Determination. I'll do it no matter what it costs. When people ask me what force holds the course when inspiration disappears, I answer without pause, determination. It's those two short words that change the geography of life. I'll do. Not I'll try, not I'll see, not when I have time. Determination is an inner contract with no fine print. It doesn't ask for guarantees, it creates them. It doesn't ask if you're in the mood, it demands action. Think about how this chain works. Disgust wakes us up and says enough. Decision directs us and says this is my course. Desire ignites us and says I want. And determination stamps it. I'll do it until it's done. It is the one that withstands the headwind of everyday life. It is the one that turns good intentions into daily confirmations. Without determination, our story becomes a collection of beautiful beginnings. With it, it's a long novel with resolutions, not just prologues. I love the image of the mountaineer. He doesn't say, if the weather is kind, if the shoes don't chafe, if the company supports me, then I'll try. He says, I will climb. And he adds, so that doubts can hear, you'll either see me at the summit or not at all because I'm not coming back without it. Friends, when a person says that not to the world but to themselves, time, fate, and circumstance call an emergency meeting and decide, we'd better not get in his way. That's the weight of determination. Many years ago, a schoolgirl answered me from the back row. Determination is when you promise yourself never to give up. So simple and so accurate. And I truly believe determination is not about loud speeches, it's about quiet promises we don't break. When we keep our word to ourselves, self-respect appears. And self-respect is the fuel of endurance. A person with self-respect doesn't wrestle with yesterday's mood. They hold on to yesterday's word. What does determination look like in a real day? It's the minimum you do even in the worst weather. Not a marathon, but your 10 pages are read. Not a perfect workout, but your 20 minutes are done. Not a major breakthrough, but one conversation, one letter, one step is there. Determination doesn't measure the day by emotions. It measures it by confirmations. Because the most dangerous thing is not a big loss, but small, I'll skip today. They break the chain of momentum. Your job is to protect the chain. Determination loves transparency. That's why I always write my promise in my journal in simple words and mark visible checks for every day I did the minimum. When the brain starts to bargain, the eyes fall on a series of small victories, and the bargaining disappears. We're already moving. We don't stop. Writing makes choice visible, and what's visible becomes binding. Memory is shaky. Ink is not. This is discipline not for heroes, but for ordinary people just like us. Are there failures? Of course. But determination doesn't confuse failure with quitting. It doesn't allow one broken day to become a broken week. It lives by the rule of return. Fell down, got up, continued. That's the difference between rigidity and soft strength. Rigidity breaks when the plan doesn't work. Soft strength bends, adapts, finds another way up the mountain and still climbs. Determination doesn't make you fragile perfectionists. It makes you flexible, resilient people. There's another trait of determination. It removes selectivity. As long as we sometimes can, we often mostly don't. But when I do this every day, appears life adjusts. Friends understand your schedule. Family sees new boundaries. Work gains a new quality. It's as if we tighten the bolts of reality and it stops rattling. Determination creates not only results, but also the context for results. And what if I'm scared, you'll say? You will be scared. But fear isn't defeated by debates. It's defeated by actions repeated so often the brain stops treating them as threats. Determination is not the absence of fear. It's the absence of fear's right to rule. Every small step is a vote for you in the internal election. And when there are more votes for than against, you feel a new freedom to act without yesterday's doubts needing to sign off. And one more thing, determination invisibly raises your market value. The world pays more to those whose word equals action. When you show up on time not for a week but for a year, when you study not for 3 days but 30 weeks, when you keep the standard not in the spotlight but in the quiet of morning, you get noticed. Opportunities love people who are predictable in the best sense. Determination is that predictability. So I invite you to do 2 simple things today. First, choose your non-negotiable minimum, the one you can do even on a hard day. Second, make yourself a promise out loud and write it on paper. I do this every day for, add the term, and the first step. Not a feeling, but a vow. Not a plan, but an action. And when in the coming days the weather misaligns, remember, we don't depend on the weather, we depend on the word. Determination is not about winning today. It's about not losing tomorrow. It's about the ability to stay on course long enough that results have no choice but to appear. And with this force, we enter the practical part, where I'll give you a simple protocol for daily confirmation, so that your I'll do it has shape, schedule, and proof. For now, shift your weight onto your front foot and take a step. Summits love those who move. Friends, now it's time to pause. You've already heard about the 4 forces that can change your life, from disgust to determination. But for these ideas to come alive in your daily experience, I want to invite you to a simple yet powerful exercise. This is not a lecture, it's a dialogue. You and me together. I'll ask you a few questions. No need to think long or search for the right answers. Just rate yourself from 1 to 10, where 1 means, this is not me at all, and 10 means, yes, that's fully me. The main rule, don't pause the video, answer on the go, from the heart. Later you can come back and dive deeper. First question. How strong is your feeling of enough today? The disgust toward those old habits that steal your energy and time. 1, you still tolerate them. 10, you're ready to break the cycle right now. Give yourself a score. Because this is where the never again moment is born. Second question. How brave are you in making decisions? Imagine yourself at a crossroads. Are you still standing there hesitating, or are you already taking a step? 1, you're camping at the intersection. 10, you decide quickly and with faith, even if it's scary. Give yourself an honest score. Third question, how hot does your desire burn? I don't mean light interest, but that fire that won't let you sleep. 1, you barely feel a spark. 10, you're ready to get up in the middle of the night and start acting. Feel how strong this fuel already is within you. Fourth question, how firmly do you hold the words, I can, in your heart? Do you hear inside the voice saying, I won't give up no matter what happens? 1, you back down easily. 10, you've already promised yourself never to give up. Give yourself a score and remember it. And finally, the 5th question. If your life became a book tomorrow, whose author would you be? Are you writing the pages yourself, or are you letting others hold the pen? 1, you give away control. 10, you consciously create the story day by day. Feel this question because it defines who you really are. Friends, these 5 questions are not just an exercise, they're a mirror. They show where you are right now and where your next step should be. Hit like if these questions made you think. Subscribe so you don't miss the next videos. And write in the comments which of these 5 questions was the hardest for you to answer. Don't worry if your scores are low right now. This is only a starting point. I always say, it doesn't matter where you start, what matters is the direction you're moving. You've already taken a step, you've looked honestly at yourself, and that's more powerful than it seems. After this video, be sure to revisit these questions again in silence with a sheet of paper, because your answers can become not just numbers, but a roadmap to a new life. Friends, let me finish on a note that may stay with you longer than any story or example. We've talked about disgust, decision, desire, and determination. 4 forces that can pull a person out of the old track and open a new road. But do you know what's more important than the road itself? The feeling that you will never again be the person you were yesterday. I know how hard it is. I know the world often says, endure, accept it. That's just how it is for everyone. But it's in that very moment when inside you answer, enough, that a different story begins. Not always loud, not always victorious right away, but always different. It's like a tiny seed that has fallen into the ground. At first it's invisible, but it grows. And one day it breaks through the soil and stretches toward the light. You already have this power within you. It will not come from circumstances. It is already here in your decision to act, in your desire to burn, in your determination not to back down. And when you unite all 4 forces, no wall will remain unconquered. I've often repeated, success is not what you chase. Success is attracted by the person you become. And now, as you hear these words, you have the chance to decide, who will you be tomorrow? The person who lets habits control them, or the one who takes the wheel in their own hands and says, I steer this ship even through the storm. Maybe today you feel small compared to the mountain you have to climb. But remember, the mountain looks unshakable only from afar. When you take the first step, the mountain begins to shrink and you begin to grow. And one day, looking back from the summit, you'll say to yourself, I didn't know I could, but I did. So today I want to leave you with a challenge. Promise yourself you will not stop until you feel these 4 forces, disgust, decision, desire, and determination, become your allies. Promise yourself you will never again allow habits to steal the life that rightfully belongs to you. Because in the end, true victory is not the applause of others. True victory is self-respect. When you quietly whisper, I promised myself and I delivered. And let this be your deepest aphorism today. Promise yourself never to give up and you'll see the world itself open doors. Are you ready? Then take that step today.